Good evening. This morning we learnt that even Spain have changed their position and are sending a naval vessel to defend Cyprus. So let's work this out. We've got the French, we've got the Greeks, we've now got the Spaniards defending what is British sovereign territory in Cyprus and the Cypriot people. But our ship is still in Portsmouth Harbour and may not be there for some time to come. The Prime Minister at lunchtime did a press conference. His solution to what should happen in the Middle East was as follows.
The long-standing British position is that the best way forward for the regime and the world is a negotiated settlement with Iran where they give up their nuclear ambitions. Now that's why I took the decision that the UK would not join the initial strikes on Iran by the US and Israel.
So that's the Prime Minister's position, that the regime's acceptable provided it gets rid of nuclear weapons. Forget the fact they publicly executed 5,000 gay people. Don't worry about that. Forget the fact that they've sponsored Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis over the last decade, and that they were the cause of what happened on the 7th of October, which has had such profound effects around the world, including on the streets of this country and in British politics. I literally find it hard to believe. And if I move on to my next theme, let's go to a comment that was made by Dr. Kouros, the Cypriot High Commissioner to the UK this morning. And this, for a High Commissioner, is unusual. He said, the French are coming. At least we expect is that the Britons will also be present, since, as I said, we are not only defending Cypriots on the islands. About 5% of the population of Cyprus are British expats who are living scattered around the islands. Let's face it, folks, we knew for the last few weeks that some kind of major attack was going to happen on Iran. It was very, very clearly signposted. Indeed, when American envoy Steve Witkoff said they could only be a week away from a nuclear weapon, it didn't take much working out what was going to happen. But we are flat-footed, we are hopeless, we are useless. We've upset the Americans, we've upset the Cypriots, we've upset the UAE, we've upset Bahrain, we've upset goodness knows how many countries. And all the Prime Minister can do is say, let's do a deal with this murderous regime in Iran. You know what I think? I think the man's a coward, and I think he is pandering to an increased influence of sectarian interest in British politics and the leftward direction of his own party. That's my view. I don't apologise for it. I mean it. Let me ask you, is Starmer a coward? Tweet #Farage on GB News or email farage@gbnews.com. I am joined in the studio by Alistair Heath, editor of the Sunday Telegraph. Matthew Saeed joins us for the first time, Sunday Times columnist and author, and regular to this show and firm supporter of everything the Prime Minister does. We have Lord John Cryer. Maybe a bit tongue-in-cheek with that, but you're going to have a tough evening, John, believe you me. Alistair, I read your piece in today's Daily Telegraph. We showed last night a comparison of the Royal Navy in 1938 to today. And I use that because that was perhaps the last time we faced the potential of serious global conflict that might involve us. And even when you look at the size of the Royal Navy, much of it is in the dockyards being prepared. We're unable to send one Type 45 destroyer for 2 weeks. What have we sunk to?
I mean, I think it's absolutely horrible what we've sunk to. I think it's a gross betrayal of ourselves and of all of our allies. I think what's happened in the last few days in geopolitical terms is like the fall of Singapore for us in terms of how it's going to reduce our influence in the Mediterranean and the Middle East, among the Gulf states, for example, who are looking and realise that we are basically completely powerless, that we don't want to do anything and that we're incapable of doing anything. I think it's truly astonishing that we're supposed to be so close to Cyprus, we've got a base there, you know, lots of British people live there, the whole place is very British, and we've done nothing. It's incredible. And the fact that the Greeks have had to send their forces, and the French, astonishing, and then the Gulf states, right? We keep saying how close we are. A lot of their senior generals and leaders have gone to Sandhurst, and there's all these connections, and yet we've done nothing to help them. It's astonishing. Obviously, we betrayed Israel 1 or 2 years ago. I thought that was a terrible thing, but now we've ended up betraying everybody else in that region. So I think the situation is grave. I'm very, very supportive of this war, by the way. I think on this issue, Trump is right. I disagree with him on Russia. I disagree with him on Greenland. But I think on this, he's absolutely right. I think this is a very moral war, a just war, and a legal war. I think the Iranian regime is absolutely evil. It's one of the great forces for bad in the world.
I agree.
And I think anything that is done to reduce its power, get rid of its nuclear ambitions, reduce or destroy its missile arsenal, because the missile arsenal business is another really, really important problem. And anything that's done to punish these barbarians who've treated their own populations so terribly is good. And I'm hopeful that Trump doesn't sort of lose interest. And so far, I actually think this conflict's worked very well, with one exception, which is that the Iranians have been much more vicious at spreading this conflict, at attacking countries like the Gulf countries and Cyprus.
Well, that shows you how much trouble they're in. Let me ask you just very quickly.
Hello, I'm Bev Turner. Now, it can feel like the money in our bank accounts at the moment does not keep up with the cost of living. And maybe there's a solution. I'm here today with the CEO of TallyMoney, Cameron Parry. Cameron, what is TallyMoney?
Well, Bev, with TallyMoney, you get a current account and a debit card, but instead of pounds, you use milligrams of gold as your everyday money.
So why gold?
Gold traditionally is a great store of value. It has, on average, gone up at over 11% per annum for the last 25 years against the pound. It's tripled in value in the last decade. And in the last 2 years alone, it's increased by 50% against the pound. Banks' savings products just can't compete with that level of growth.
But this isn't just about gold. This is about a currency that you guys have created at TallyMoney. Explain it to me as though I'm an idiot.
So, look, people need to be able to hold their earnings and build their savings in a money that retains its value and remains in their legal control and remains theirs to access, away from government control.
Great. You had me at not exposed to government control.
You should feel safe and happy with your money. You should have peace of mind. The more money you see in your bank balance, and that's the type of thing we're trying to deliver, and give people choice in the type of money they get to use every day.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Cameron. Thank you.
Is Starmer a coward? Why is he behaving like this? I mean, surely you decide, you back this side or the other side.
Yes.
A constant, we were not involved, we were not involved. Now calling for negotiations with the mullahs. And by the way, we did this in 2015. Yes. We did the JCPOA deal in 2015 with Iran, and they promised us they would stop nuclear enrichment and did the opposite.
Yes, I mean, I oppose that deal. That deal was a farce. I think Starmer's problem is that he's effectively a pacifist. He doesn't believe in a just war. He thinks all wars are basically illegal, really. And he's got an Attorney General who's basically his ideological ally, Lord Hermer, who's a complete disgrace and a disaster. It is simply wrong that this war... you've got to... Self-defence doesn't just start when someone's actually attacked you. It has to be preemptive.
No, if we followed international law, we probably wouldn't have been too upset about many of the things in the 1930s. It's almost as if it was only until Iran developed the bomb and attacked people that Lord Hermer would get upset. I mean, look, John, I put it to you that our Prime Minister has managed in the last week to alienate almost all of our friends.
I don't know. That remains to be seen. I mean, I would say he's not a coward. I've seen him close up for 10 years, 11
Well, the
years.
Cypriot High Commissioner's not very pleased. The American President's not very pleased. The UAE are livid.
We're talking about the Prime Minister's personal morality. And I just don't see him in those terms. However, what I would say is this. As you know, I've been standing up in Parliament when I was in the House of Commons, where you are, and now in the Lords, and saying we should be taking action against Iran. It's the most evil regime probably this world has seen since the 1930s. Certainly as far as persecution of Jews, of gay men and women are concerned. As far as international law is concerned, I suppose it revolves around your interpretation of the word threat, or maybe the word's immediate threat. Yeah. Now, you can easily mount an argument to say that they are an immediate threat. On the nuclear issue, I have got every sympathy with the action that they've been taken, and the deal, so-called deal that was done in 2015, was not worth the paper it was written on. The problem I've got with the action that Trump's taken is, how do you now get out of it? I mean, it's easy to say, it's easy to send the bombers in, send the forces in. It's how you get out. And what did damage our reputation in the Middle East? 20 years ago, 30 years ago, was the fact that we were a country that was very, 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 probably inextricably, at least for a few years, was the action we took in Iraq. And we're clearly not, Trump's not learned from what happened in
John,
Iraq.
I get that, but there was no direct threat to us from Iraq at all. They concocted a story that wasn't true. I mean, it seems to me that Iran is the global epicenter of much of the terrorism that we see.
Yeah.
I mean, Matthew, I just sort of take a step back. Our standing in the world, we're looking pretty pygmy-like, aren't we?
But one of the reasons for this is because the context is extremely important. The cut in defence expenditure happened under the Conservatives.
Yes.
Between 2010 and 2015, in real terms, our defence budget fell by 22%. Size of the regular army, it's gone down by 75%. People are making comparisons with Harold Wilson during Vietnam in 1965. The army was far bigger, and it's because we're weak. That is why Starmer should have gone with America. He should have allowed them to use our bases. We rely on the American security guarantee. When you're weak, you have to rely on your alliance.
But isn't that the point? I agree with you totally that when he points the finger across the Commons and says, you lot cut defence, it's absolutely right, and you've given the number 22% in real terms. But to forbid Diego Garcia being used, which meant that 2 men teams had to fly 37-hour round trips from Missouri. I mean, that's where the weakness began,
I guess what I'm saying, Nigel, is that projecting power is determined by your economic and military capacity. Our economic capacity has been denuded, and that happened under the Conservatives and under Labour, in my view. Our military capability has been denuded. That's why I think we have to stay close to the Americans publicly. Privately, like you, I have severe doubts about this war, not because I feel anything but contempt for an evil regime, but it's easy to start a conflict, very difficult to control the unintended consequences. And just think about the ethnic position in Iran, which we're beginning to learn about. We had no idea in Iraq, by the way, the clan structure, the tribal structure. People talk about Shia Sunni. The real problem there was the clan leaders. But in Iran, you have Kurds, Balochs, you have Persians, you have Arabs. I don't think Trump, I don't know if you agree, Nigel, I'm not sure that Trump or the State Department or the Pentagon has a clear plan for the aftermath.
I would say this to you.
That, by the way, can be a violation of Western security interests. One final point, if I may.
Please.
The real flashpoint in global affairs today, for me, the most important geopolitical conflict, by the way, is in Ukraine. I'd love to see Trump stepping up there. He talks about his incredible armed forces. It's true. But he hasn't shared key security intelligence with Ukraine at very important moments. He's not providing any weapons except that is paid for by Europe. I would love to see it there. But it's Taiwan because of its role in the production of advanced semiconductors. The West, the free world that I think, regardless of your left or right, we all believe in it against the autocratic axis. We are stretched, Nigel. Are we not? The military in the Western alliance, and if President Xi feels confident enough to blockade Taiwan, I'm not sure we're going to be able to defend it.
I equally worry about that as well. I would say this to both of you, that I completely understand it's impossible to see where this ends. My view is that this American military is different to the American military of 20, 25 years ago. I think the way they're able to use tech, their skills, from what I'm told, the missile base in Iran is seriously denuded, let alone what they've used to fire. And I think if the result of this action stops Iran building a nuclear bomb, then to me it's worthwhile.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. What worries me is that we could end up with some sort of vacuum in Iran.
No, there is a danger.
And that could get an awful lot worse. If we end up with a civil war in Iran, then it's going to be even worse.
And as Matthew says, there are different groups there. No, I mean, I get it. Alistair.
Yeah, am
I right in saying, would you agree with me that if they get rid of their nuclear capability, it's been worth it for that alone?
Yes, I mean, that's my position. So my position is you don't need perfection for this war to have been worth it. Of course, there are risks. Things can spiral out of control in certain ways. There are horror scenarios where somehow it could be even worse than we've got now. That is possible. But I think, perfection is not necessary here. If you drastically reduce or delay them, the ability for them to get nuclear weapons, and if you drastically reduce their missile situation,
which we're doing,
then it's worth it. The missiles are very, very important here. It's not just the nuclear, but the nuclear obviously is a central issue. I think sometimes the idea that we need to have a fully formed plan to see exactly how a war is going to end, I don't really buy that. I mean,
but at least here there's a clear objective, folks. I'm going to have to draw stumps on it. We could debate it for hours.